A face, twisted in agony, helpless children running from flames, and soldiers lying dead in piles of rubble. Photographs like these have changed American views forever. The innovation of uncensored photojournalism during the Vietnam conflict exposed the reality of war, thus impacting the American opinion of the Vietnam conflict and ultimately changing modern censorship. After Vietnam gained its independence from France, the Geneva Peace Accords split Vietnam into two nations at the 17th parallel. With the aid of the United States, South Vietnam emerged in 1955 as a democratic country. Soon problems arose with communist North Vietnam and a civil war began. The United States willingly supported South Vietnam because it wanted to contain communism from spreading to other regions as the domino theory predicted. The Vietnam conflict was the first uncensored conflict or war for the United States. This innovation, made possible by new policies involving uncensored photography and an advancement in technology, permitted for the first time Americans to view actual images of combat. In the fight against communism, the American government wanted to enhance communication to gather empathy for the cause of war.
If you're going to live in a democracy where the population gets to decide whether or not, in the long run, gets to decide whether or not we're going to go to war, they are entitled to know how that war is being fought. And the only way that will happen is if there is a free and robust press covering that war free of censorship.
As the media's influence increased, the ground rules established by the U.S. government began to diminish. Television analyst Edward J. Epstein once said,
"Never before in history has a nation allowed its citizens to view uncensored scenes of combat, destruction, and atrocities in their living rooms in living color."
With vivid images flashing across television screens, Americans were transported to Vietnam to witness war. Because this was the first time uncensored photography had ever been allowed, the media could portray whatever message they wanted. Since the media was able to do this, this caused the conflict between the media and the government. In previous wars and conflicts, the media and government were united in the message they provided to the American public. However, in Vietnam, the media branched away from the government agenda and broadcast a different view. War journalist Lyle Dennison explained,
"The media has historically been government watchdogs, but the watchdog may have fallen asleep."
This meaning, the media would no longer represent the government's perspective and would broadcast their own message. As the media's coverage of Vietnam escalated, more and more graphic pictures and footage were shown. Although there was an unyielding truth in what the images displayed, photographs were not always used in the correct context. After the communists surprised and attacked American and Vietnamese troops in a military campaign known as the Tet Offensive, which was a political loss for the United States, TV newscaster Walter Cronkite exclaimed,
"What is going on? I thought we were winning the war."
For as much violence and destruction that was happening, there were also soldiers helping the Vietnamese people in defending a way of thinking. However, the mass of brutal war pictures overtook the scenes of Americans serving others. President Nixon later said,
"In each night's TV news and each morning's paper, the war was reported battle by battle, but little or no sense of the underlying purpose of the fighting was conveyed."
Voluntary or drafted photographers lived similar lives as the soldiers in order to document the conflict. The constant fears of guerrilla warfare tactics haunted both the soldiers and photographers, which created camaraderie between the two. Vietnam photographer Nick Mills once said,
"Soldiers had not understood that we were combat photographers, and our jobs were just as relevant or justifiable or as irrelevant and unjustifiable as anyone in Vietnam."
Combat photographers dangerously did what they did to document the conflict for America. Iraqi war photographer Zariah Miller said,
"It must be your passion and your mission. If you think of it as a job, you will never make it."
As Americans witnessed the war exposed by the media, the traditional support for it faded, and a strong uprising of anti-war feelings began. Uncensored photographs helped to impact how Americans felt about the conflict. These feelings of opposition led to an anti-war campaign. Because the wave of violent pictures overshadowed the good being done in Vietnam, violence and brutality were common scenes in newscasts. On May 4th, 1970, the National Guard opened fire on protesting students, killing 4 and wounding 9 at Kent University. 3 days later, 2 more students were killed at Jackson State. For days after this tragedy, hundreds of colleges and universities were shut down due to the thousands of students across the country protesting. Photographs of these shootings motivated many who had never protested before to join the anti-war cause. On May 9th and 10th, over 100,000 people came from all over the country to protest in Washington, D.C., creating one of the biggest American protests in history. Average citizens to famous celebrities were influenced by the vivid war pictures. Big names such as Jimi Hendrix and John Lennon protested the war as well, with Lennon's song "Give Peace a Chance" becoming the anti-war anthem. Magazines such as Time and much of the evening news devoted themselves to covering the Vietnam War, especially the anti-war movement. Political science student Brady Priest said,
"The power of images is a testament to the prevailing attitudes of the times. As people were searching for rallying points with which they could justify their anti-war sentiments in response to a government that wanted to write protesters off as unpatriotic or cowardly citizens."
However, the majority of the older generation and those with traditional beliefs remained true to their values that loyalty to their country was their duty.
Some people looked at the pictures of all the dead and said, "Oh my God, this is worse than we thought it was. We have to do something about this." And other people looked at it and said, "They shall not die in vain."
After being influenced with the message shown in photographs, the opposition towards the war could not be ignored any longer. This led to the withdrawal of American troops in Vietnam.
500,000 people marching through the streets of Washington are pretty hard to ignore. I don't think there's any doubt that the movement helped end the war.
Uncensored photography in the Vietnam conflict has forever impacted the way America views present and future wars. 9/11 and the war in Iraq have altered the way print and broadcasts cover government issues. The government now censors all wars and conflicts as a result of Vietnam. In Vietnam, photographers were free to roam and publish at will, whereas in Iraq, photographers are rarely let onto combat zones.
It's as if it's okay to take pictures of soldiers handing lollipops to kids on the street and providing medical care, but photographing the actual war is unacceptable.
Zariah Miller was removed from his job as a photographer after publishing graphic war pictures.
"I took pictures of something they didn't like, and they removed me, deciding what I can and cannot document. I don't see a clearer definition of censorship."
Vietnam, in a way, can be considered as an experiment. Photographers had the technology and the conditions to publish uncensored. However, this trial of uncensorship had a massive impact on the American society.
Never again will America be able to fight an enemy abroad with unity and strength of purpose at home.
Uncensored photography in the Vietnam conflict has shown the world the truth. It has universally changed opinions. By allowing freedom in the pictures that could be published, a great number of events in America's past, present, and future have and will be influenced. Cameras were present to capture each graphic, brutal scene of combat.
Vietnam was a graveyard of lost hopes, destroyed vanity, glib promises, and good intentions.
The tragic photos taken in Vietnam have left their handprints on the heart of America and will forever tell the many priceless truths of Vietnam.